if you suddenly found yourself transported back in time to medieval England, the very first thing you would notice would be the silence. A silence unlike anything in the modern world. There are no engines, no buzzing of lights, no background hum of electricity. Instead, the air is filled with the gentle crackle of distant fires, the clucking of chickens in small yards, the bleating of sheep, and the slow, steady creak of wooden carts moving along uneven dirt roads. The quiet is deep, almost heavy, broken only by the tolling of a distant church bell, its echoes rolling gently across the countryside to mark the passing of time. Time itself feels slower here. The hours do not rush forward as they do in the modern world. They stretch, they linger, they belong not to the clock, but to the rhythm of the sun and the turning of the seasons. The countryside is dotted with small villages, each a modest collection of timber-framed houses with thatched roofs, thatched thick enough to keep out the wind and rain. The homes are simple, sometimes leaning slightly, their walls built of wattle and daub, a mixture of wooden strips, mud and straw. Smoke curls lazily from holes in the roofs as fires burn low inside, filling the air with a mixture of warmth and a faint, earthy smell. Inside, it is dark and close. Windows, if they exist, are no more than small openings covered with oiled parchment, letting in a dim light. A single room may serve as kitchen, bedroom, and workspace. Families sleep together on straw-stuffed mattresses, often sharing space with their animals, who help provide warmth in the cold nights. The ground beneath your feet is uneven and muddy, especially after rain. There are no paved sidewalks, only beaten earth, trodden by generations of villagers and the hooves of animals. Narrow lanes twist through the village, leading to small fields, gardens, and a central green where animals graze. Beyond the village lies the open farmland, neatly divided into strips. Peasants, called serfs or villeins, work the land not for themselves, but for the lord of the manor. Their labor is constant, digging, planting, harvesting, mending tools, tending animals, an endless cycle that repeats year after year, bound to the soil as tightly as the roots of the crops they grow. The clothing of the people is plain and practical, made almost entirely from wool or linen. Men wear long tunics, belted at the waist, with leggings or hose. Women wear long dresses, often covered by aprons, with simple veils or kerchiefs covering their hair. The colours are dull, faded shades of brown, grey, or green, for dyes are expensive, and bright fabrics are a luxury reserved for the wealthy. Shoes are made of leather, simple and worn, sometimes little more than scraps bound together with twine. To the modern eye, everyone seems dressed almost the same, blending into the muted tones of the earth and sky. Food in medieval England is not what a time traveller might expect. There are no rich feasts for the ordinary person, no spices from distant lands, no sugar to sweeten meals. The daily diet consists of coarse bread made from rye or barley, thick porridge made of oats, and pottage, a kind of stew made from whatever vegetables are available. Beans, peas, onions, and leeks are common, while meat is rare, reserved for festivals or for those with wealth. Ale is the most common drink, weak in strength but safer than water, which is often unclean. In the fields, children scavenge for berries or nuts, while adults gather herbs and roots to flavour their meals. Meals are eaten from wooden bowls with spoons carved by hand and shared by the whole family. The structure of society is rigid and inescapable. At the bottom are the peasants, tied to the land, working not only for their own survival, but to pay rent, taxes, and labour to their lord. Above them are the knights, armoured men sworn to protect their lords and uphold the codes of loyalty and honour. Higher still are the nobles, who live in manors or castles, overseeing their lands and the people who labour upon them. And above all, at the very top of this hierarchy, sits the king, a distant figure of immense authority, ruling by divine right, his word law across the kingdom. The system is known as feudalism, a pyramid of obligations and duties that binds everyone into place. Mobility is rare. A peasant is born a peasant, and most will die never having travelled more than a few miles from the place of their birth. The church, however, casts the greatest shadow over medieval life. In the centre of every village stands a church, often the largest and most impressive building around. Its stone walls rise above the thatched cottages, its bell tower reaching toward the sky. The church is not only a place of worship, but the centre of community life. Festivals, fairs, marriages, baptisms, and even the marking of time itself revolve around the church. The calendar is not measured by months and weeks alone, but by holy days, saints' feasts, and the turning of the liturgical year. The priests hold knowledge and authority, guiding the villagers not only in matters of faith, but in matters of law and daily life. Latin is the language of scripture and prayer, though the ordinary people do not understand it. They trust the words of the priest, who interprets the mysteries of heaven for them. For a modern traveller, the pace of medieval England would be almost dreamlike. Life is slow, repetitive, and deeply tied to the natural world. Seasons dictate work. Spring is for planting, summer for tending crops, autumn for harvesting, and winter for survival. The cycle repeats without end, year after year, generation after generation. Children grow up to inherit the same lives as their parents, learning trades, tilling fields, or serving in households. Change comes rarely, and when it does, through war, famine, or plague, it comes with devastating force. Yet in the stillness of daily life, there is a rhythm, a sense of continuity that feels timeless. And so, if you were to time travel to medieval England, you would find yourself in a world where time is not a rush, but a steady march, where silence is filled with the sounds of nature, and where every detail of life, no matter how small, carries the weight of tradition. It is a world both simple and harsh, quiet yet full of meaning, distant yet strangely familiar, like stepping into a dream that stretches on, slow and unchanging, beneath the steady toll of the church bell. If you were to continue your journey through medieval England, wandering slowly beyond the village and into the wider countryside, you would soon notice how deeply the natural world shaped every aspect of life. Fields stretch out across the landscape, divided into narrow strips of land worked by different families. The system is communal. No single peasant owns a whole field. Instead, each family tends scattered strips, planting grain, beans or peas, according to the season. This system, though simple, ties the entire community together, for everyone depends on the collective harvest. A poor season means hunger for all, while a good season means relief, feasting, and survival through the long winter. The air is filled with the earthy smell of freshly turned soil, the faint sweetness of hay drying in the fields, and the damp scent of water from streams and wells. Farmers work with wooden ploughs, often pulled by oxen, their progress slow but steady. Scythes and sickles gleam in the sunlight as men and women harvest the crops, their movements repetitive, practiced, and almost meditative. Children scatter in the fields, chasing birds away or gathering kindling for the hearth fires back home. Life is physically demanding, every task requiring effort, but it is also predictable, guided by cycles as old as time itself. Walking further, you would find small hamlets and manor houses, each estate overseen by a local lord. The manor is often the largest dwelling in the area, built of timber or stone, surrounded by barns, stables, and storage buildings. Inside, the lord and his household enjoy greater comforts than the villagers, though even these comforts appear modest to modern eyes. Rushes or straw cover the floors, tapestries hang on the walls to keep out the cold, and a central hearth warms the hall. Meals here are more abundant, including meat, poultry, and sometimes imported spices or wine, luxuries far beyond the reach of ordinary peasants. Yet even the lord's life is tied to the rhythms of the land, for his wealth and power depend on the labour of those who work beneath him. Travelling roads in medieval England is a slow, uneven experience. The pathways are little more than dirt tracks, muddy in the rain, dusty in the summer, and often rutted by the wheels of carts. Bridges are few, and rivers are crossed by fords or ferries. Inns are rare outside larger towns, so most travelers rely on the hospitality of monasteries or strangers along the way. The journey from one village to another can take hours on foot and longer still by cart. For most peasants, travel is unnecessary. Their entire world exists within a few miles of their birthplace. To journey far is to risk danger, for the roads can be lonely and bandits sometimes lurk in the forests. Yet towns and cities are beginning to grow, bustling centers of trade and craft. Walking into a town, you would find narrow streets crowded with wooden houses that lean toward each other as though about to touch. Markets overflow with activity, bakers selling loaves of bread still warm from the oven, blacksmiths hammering at iron, merchants calling out prices for cloth, salt, or spices. The smell is a mixture of fresh bread, wood smoke, and less pleasant odors. Refuse tossed into the streets, animals wandering freely, and the general closeness of so many people living side by side. Towns are noisy compared to villages, alive with chatter, bargaining, and the ringing of church bells that echo above the rooftops. Religion is everywhere, present in every corner of medieval England. Beyond the parish church of the village, great monasteries and abbeys dot the countryside, their stone walls rising tall against the horizon. Monks live here in quiet seclusion, praying at regular intervals throughout the day and night, tending gardens, copying manuscripts, and offering charity to the poor. These monasteries are centers of learning and preservation, safeguarding books and knowledge through careful, deliberate labor. For the common traveler, to step inside a monastery is to step into another world, a place of quiet chants, candlelight, and the faint smell of ink on parchment. Life, however, is not free from hardship. Illness is common, for medicine is limited and poorly understood. A fever, an infected wound, or a poor harvest can be deadly. Herbs, charms, and prayers are the most common remedies. Midwives assist in childbirth, though many infants do not survive their first years. Winter is especially difficult when food stores grow thin and sickness spreads in the cold. Yet festivals bring joy to the year. Celebrations of Christmas, Easter, and midsummer fill the villages with music, dancing, and feasting. These moments of cheer are treasured, for they break the steady rhythm of labor with color and sound. As the sun sets over medieval England, the world grows dark in a way unfamiliar to the modern traveler. Without electric light, night belongs to the moon, the stars, and the flicker of fire. Candles are costly, so most homes rely on the glow of a hearth or a simple rushlight, an oiled reed that burns slowly but dimly. The village becomes quiet, with only the sounds of animals in the byre or the wind moving through the trees. Inside, families gather close around the fire, sharing stories, songs, or quiet moments before sleep. The night stretches long, cold, and silent until the first light of dawn calls them back to work again. To wander through medieval England as a time traveler is to wander through a world at once distant and strangely familiar. It is a world where life is slow, shaped by earth and sky, and where every sound, smell, and sight carries with it the weight of tradition. The tolling of the church bell, the creak of the wooden cart, the rustle of grain in the fields, all these become the markers of time. And as you walk through it, you cannot help but feel that centuries are passing at the pace of a single step, steady, unchanging, and eternal. If you, as a time traveler, were to spend not just a moment but an entire day in medieval England, you would find life unfolding at a pace so deliberate and unhurried that the hours themselves seem stretched into eternity. From the very first light of dawn until the quiet closing of night, every action, every routine, every sound and silence carries with it the weight of tradition and the rhythm of necessity. Life is simple, yet layered with ritual, repetition, and meaning that makes the smallest detail linger. At dawn, the village begins to stir. There are no alarm clocks, no ringing phones, no mechanical buzz to rouse people from their sleep. Instead, the first rays of sunlight slipping through cracks in the shutters, or the faint crowing of a rooster serve as the day's gentle summons. The hearth fire, which may have smouldered through the night, is coaxed back to life with careful breaths and fresh kindling. A faint glow fills the room, the smell of smoke curling upward and clinging to the low wooden beams of the ceiling. Families rise from their straw mattresses, often stiff and weary, brushing off bits of husk or dust, and begin their day without hurry, for the day's tasks are already well known, unchanged for generations. Breakfast is not the rich meal a modern traveller might expect. Instead, it is a simple fare of bread left from the previous day, perhaps dipped into ale or a thin broth if available. Children eat alongside their parents, the smallest ones clutching coarse crusts with both hands, while older children are already expected to help with chores, fetching water from the well, feeding chickens, or carrying wood. Conversation is minimal, not from unhappiness, but because words are precious and life itself is work enough. As the morning unfolds, men and women alike move into their daily labor. For peasants, this means heading into the fields, tools carried over shoulders, their steps steady and sure from years of repetition. Wooden plows pulled by oxen break the soil, while hands sow seeds with practiced rhythm. Women tend vegetable plots, milk goats or cows, spin wool into thread, and prepare pottage for the midday meal. Children help in smaller tasks, scaring crows from the grain, gathering eggs, or simply watching the younger ones. There is no sense of rush, for the work is endless, continuing season after season, a cycle as dependable as the sunrise. By midday, the bells of the church ring out, reminding all of prayer and marking the passage of time. The sound carries far across the fields, rolling like a steady heartbeat of the village. Work pauses briefly for a meal, often pottage once more, thickened with peas, beans, or cabbage, accompanied by bread and a cup of ale. Sometimes, on fortunate days, there may be cheese or a small bit of salted meat. Families sit together in the shade of a tree or by the edge of the field, sharing their food quietly, resting before returning to labor. The afternoon is a mirror of the morning. The same tasks continue, the same movements repeated, scything grass, weeding plots, repairing fences. There is a certain peace in the sameness, a rhythm that soothes even as it exhausts. For a traveller from the modern world, it might feel monotonous, but for those who live here, it is life itself, steady and unchanging, providing both food and meaning. As the sun sinks lower, work begins to draw to a close. Animals are brought in, tools are put away, and families return to their homes. The evening meal is prepared, once again simple but shared, often accompanied by quiet talk or a story told by firelight. Sometimes a neighbor visits, sometimes music drifts faintly through the village, played on a lute or a flute. Children grow drowsy, and parents settle them onto straw mattresses once more, the day's labor leaving their bodies tired, yet content in the knowledge that the rhythm will repeat tomorrow, just as it has for centuries. Yet not every day is so predictable. Illness often intrudes, for medieval medicine is primitive, guided more by superstition than science. If someone falls sick, they may be treated with herbs gathered from hedgerows, sage for sore throats, chamomile for fevers, garlic for infections. Remedies are often accompanied by prayers, charms, or the recitation of holy words. The physician, if one is nearby, prescribes bleeding, or the balancing of humours, treatments that are as dangerous as the illness itself. Most trust in the wisdom of local healers or midwives, whose knowledge of herbs and practical care often proves more reliable than any learned doctor. To be ill in medieval England is to be at the mercy of faith, chance, and the slow resilience of the body. The law, too, carries a sharp edge. Punishments are harsh and intended not only to correct but to warn others. A thief may be put in the stocks in the village square, left for hours or even days as neighbours jeer or pelt them with refuse. More serious crimes are punished by whipping, mutilation, or even death, carried out in public as a grim reminder of order. Yet despite their severity, such punishments are also part of the rhythm of life, accepted as inevitable and unquestioned by those who live within the system. For a traveler, they would appear brutal and unforgiving, but for villagers, they are the rules that hold their fragile world together. Against this backdrop of labor and hardship, festivals shine like brief bursts of color. The church calendar marks holy days when work is set aside and celebration fills the air. At Christmas, villagers decorate with greenery, sing carols, and feast together in the Lord's Hall if they are fortunate. Easter brings processions, prayers, and joyful gatherings. Midsummer, too, is celebrated with bonfires, dancing, and music, the air alive with laughter and merriment. On such days, the ordinary burdens of life are lifted, and the village becomes a place of light and joy, however temporary. When night falls once again, the world sinks into a stillness deeper than most modern travelers can imagine. The darkness is complete, broken only by the faint glow of the moon or the flicker of torches and candles. Inside, families huddle close, the fire casting long shadows on the walls. There are no clocks to mark the hours, no glowing screens to keep people awake. Sleep comes naturally, as bodies weary from the day's labor sink into rest. Outside, the night is alive only with the sound of the wind in the trees, the hoot of an owl, or the distant bark of a dog. And so, in medieval England, a day passes, and then another, and then another. Each one almost indistinguishable from the last, yet each one carrying within it the quiet dignity of survival, of tradition, of life lived close to the earth. For the time traveler, it may seem endless, slow, even heavy. But for those who belong to this world, it is the only rhythm they know. A rhythm as steady as the toll of the church bell, as eternal as the rising and setting of the sun.